Well, hello, all you film lovers, and welcome to Jim and Rob Over-Analyze Movies, home of the best chat on the internet. On our show, we go above and beyond your typical review, diving deep into the craft, the story, and meaning of the films we watch today. So stay tuned for today's episode and what is sure to be a great conversation about Marvel's latest, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Which should be pretty freaking cool. But first, before we get into the meat of the show, I think it's time to bring in my co-host with the most, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. How are you doing, my friend?
Good. Usually there's a few minutes and I can just, polish my head or whatever, but good. I actually literally just rolled in from the lake for this, hoping that there wouldn't be any trains cutting me off. And I was practicing my what do we call that first bit here? First thoughts or quick review part.
The quick review, the quick take.
After the Bomber game ends, and there's something to be said about driving across the prairies and listening to a football game on the radio. After the game ended, I just shut off the radio and tried a couple takes and tried to get my thoughts in order. So yeah,
I get what you're saying. I get it. I get it.
Yep.
Listen, Jim, before we get into the meat of our show, get into the meat of the episode, I've got some trash talky news items I'd love to share with you. That you good with that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's see. First of all,
if you tried to get a hold of me earlier, I don't really have too much access at the lake, so I was hoping there would be, anyway. So you might actually, this
you're
is
gonna have to wing it.
Surprisey stuff. Yes, exactly.
You're gonna have to wing it.
Yeah.
Okay. In our first story, Mr. Chaboyko, as you can see on the screen, Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins channeled her inner Trump and said that movies on Netflix and the like seemed fake to her. I think if we look at the screen here, one of my favorite quotes on these. Here it is. All of the films that streaming services are putting out, I'm sorry, they look like fake movies to me. I don't hear about them. I don't read about them. It's not working as a model for establishing legendary greatness.
Like Wonder Woman 84.
Yeah.
Sorry, gal.
That was my thought. Well, what are you talking about? What if this is the first you've seen of it? What is your hot take on this? Go.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about this earlier this week. It's almost like sometimes they catch maybe they're genuinely this sort of antagonistic, but there's low key antagonism, but. I can sort of see what she says. The implication is that everyone else makes fake movies, I make real movies. But it's sort of a weird comment, isn't it? And it's not like she's got as far as I know, she's not got a gigantic track record either. It's not like she's made 25 movies. So
well, and if you look further in the piece, it's kind of hilarious. Of late, Netflix has released 3 Oscar-nominated films. Alfonso Cuarón's Roma. They're made of Roma. Set in Mexico in I want to say the 70s. But I could see why you're kind of stumbling on that one. Who the heck is this Alfonso Cuarón? Flash in the pan. He'll never make another decent movie. Of course, Scorsese's The Irishman. That must really stick in his craw that someone making one of those cinematic. What does he call it? They're not cinema. They are. Amusements.
Entertainments or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to the cinema to witness an entertainment. Yeah.
So I think I did find it. I did find it entertaining, and we've already got people in the chat. Looks like we've got here. Let's say a quick hello, and then we'll get back into the news. First of all, Richard L. Good to see you here, man. Sean from Lost in the Reel. And I was just thinking of him earlier as I was prepping for our Trash Talk News segment. And great to see you here, Sean. And then, of course, the Upside Dan. Good to see you, man. Woo! Oh, and Shashank, our man in Chennai.
This is awesome.
Great to see you here, man.
It's for Labor Day.
Yeah, this is fantastic. All right. Anything else you wanted to add to that before I move to the next story, Mr.
Well, yeah,
Schwartz?
I mean, it might have been a shot across the bow, considering what Scorsese had said about Marvel movies in particular. I can't figure that out. I sort of get where she's coming from in that movies that are strictly go to streaming, they do sort of lack that sort of punch, right? You might see the trailer and
the heft, the gravitas.
Yeah, it's just and the whole, and let's not downplay the ritual of going to a movie. It's kind of a neat thing. I've now seen 2 movies in the movie theater, which I'm sure some of our American friends will laugh at since COVID. The sort of the chains have been slightly released. And I'm the thing that I love most about it is that you're not aware of time. Any other time, there's a light, right? I'm looking at a clock right now. There's a clock on my phone. There's a clock if you're watching a DVD. Remember those? There's a light there. So you're always conscious of the time. When I'm in the theater, none of that. I don't look at the watch. I don't need to know what time it is. So there's certain aspects about the movie going to the theater that I think is better than.
But honestly, like, I'd see if she had a deeper analysis than this. But I think, though, to totally write off, they seem fake. Like, it's such a hot take. It's such a hot take. I believe that deserves. Boy, we haven't brought out Hot Take Henry in a while, but I believe. Hot take. I don't know if you heard that.
It didn't get the echo.
Hot take.
There we go.
Awesome. But yeah, it lacks something that oh, you know what? I've lost my train of thought all of a sudden. Oh yeah, she is not providing analysis.
Yeah.
She is just running down movies that are going to streaming, almost like she's like, my art, my cinema was taken away from the theater and put on that peasant television box, without kind of being aware of, first of all, not just the grand changes, but also, fuck's sakes, it's been a global pandemic. If she even looks at her own country, well over 500,000 people dead, and that toll continues to rise. Yeah. Guess what? You be happy that you got some, and that movie wasn't exactly a great piece of cinema or amusement. It's like not many of us were amused. Not many of like.
What have you done for us lately? As Janet Jackson has sung in the past. I should mention really quickly.
We got to get a move on, but
real quick. Quentin Tarantino talked to Mark Maron in Mark's great interview show and went at length about how he released Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just before. He talked about it like it was just before the walls came down or the castle gate came down. So if you want to look for that, go back. And it's kind of interesting how a filmmaker regards that. Anyway, next topic.
Send the link and I'll put it in a pinned comment.
Yeah.
Okay. So folks, our next comment. Yes. Rumor has it. Here, let me bring up the story. This was in a couple of days ago in Screen Rant. Rumor has it that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the Oscars folks, might be taking a few changes to bump up the ratings. One change, let's see here. Whoops. That's what I wanted. One change may be to move the awards, the awards for short subjects, amongst other less cared about categories, to a pre-broadcast event, or perhaps during commercial breaks. There was also some blah, blah, blah about making the show more a celebration of film than a competition between films, given the increasingly niche tastes of Academy members. And Jim, this is, you know what? Let me give it a bit more space. Let me see if I can't find the quote, get the quote on the screen here. Yes, here. So this, and it is my favorite part of it, Jim. I hope people can, actually, let me see if I can't increase the size a bit. There we go. Look at that. I love this. The writer says, a poll taken before the 2021 Oscars found that audiences were unaware of most of the year's nominees for Best Picture. Whether or not the public should branch out or the Academy should adapt to suit their tastes will be part of the ongoing debate. Now, what I really enjoyed here, Jim, wait for it, is let's move to, Matt Neglia, and it's a guy I do respect. He did a bit. Where is it here? I got it on here, of course, reacting to it. He's a pundit and a critic, certainly at a much higher level than you and I are, but, still part of the internet scene. And he goes, no, and fuck no. It's never going to happen at the Academy. Stop fucking around and accept reality. And it's like, well, what are you talking about? Last year's Oscars, now mind you, COVID Oscars, lowest turnout or lowest ratings ever, but that had been going on for a while. Another one, and here's an interesting one. Okay, so Danielle Saltzman on her blog, she calls it Saltzy at the Movies. And she did a piece. Now, I misunderstood because I had commented back. She said, to this fakakta bullshit. And I commented first as I got the impression it was general audiences because her piece has a lot to do with, hey, read the right reporters, Jim. And this is important here. You read the right reporters. And because everything was on streaming, you had plenty of time to watch all the nominated movies. And that's on you. And that's like a quote from her thing. But I thought she's like, oh, she must be talking about the Academy audience, like the Academy members. And it's like, I thought it was the public because, that's not going to happen. Hey, public, you read these. So she says, and I had to reread the piece. She did. She commented back. She goes, did I not make that clear? That it's the general public. And so I did make a reply. I said, my bad, Daniel. It looks like, here, let's get this back. Let's get this back here. All right. My bad, Daniel. It looks like that I was conflating a couple of your paragraphs. So to be sure I understand you, are you saying that the public should watch a wider range of movies as opposed to the Academy tweak their show to appeal to a wider range of the public? I have not read her response yet, so this is hot. This is like live.
Here we go.
Jim, live. Okay. Saltzman, she says, the public definitely should be making an effort to watch a wider selection of films rather than just the studio tentpoles. After the pandemic forced the delay of many studio releases, I struggled to bring in traffic until WW84 was released. It's like, okay, now my instant reaction is like, connection. Okay, so the public is at fault because they're not watching. And I appreciate, I suspect all the big players took a traffic haircut because the public wasn't. There's lots of movies still being released, but they were not. They weren't going to her blog. They weren't going to a lot of critics. In part because they could still be seeing them. they just watched them at home because it's, oh, well, what do I need a review for? I'll watch it for 10 minutes on Netflix. And if I don't like it, I'll turn it off.
Yeah.
But I'm there is many other comments to this. Let's get back looking at each other here. These sorry, I just can't get over this. So much of this drama-rama is really a lot of critics. It can't change. It's all wrong. And I think a lot of it's, well, the public's wrong. Don't change anything. Some of her, and I'll put her blog post, like, I mean, I even agree with a lot of it. I'd feel bad telling some short film, oh, guess what? You're in the commercials now.
Yeah.
What, like I'm going to be in a commercial? No. While people are watching a commercial, we'll give you your award. Get you a couple of pictures, maybe with a 3rd-tier star. But at the same time, like, the Oscars probably has to do something, you know? Anyway,
yeah,
what do you think?
Well, here's the first thing. Have you ever tried to watch the People's Choice Awards? Yeah, it's and you know, this might make me sound like one of the club members from Caddyshack last week that we reviewed, but
I believe it will.
Boy, they're not very good programs, and they don't make for compelling TV. Last time I watched one, was many years ago, but different award shows have different purposes. That's why there are so many of them. There's the Independent Spirit Awards, there's the Razzies, there's the Oscars, there's the Golden Globes. And so, taken together, they each have a different kind of a purpose or what have you. So, yeah, I mean,
well, you know what, Jim, I mean, no one's saying turn it into the people's, I don't think they're saying turn it into the People's Choice Award.
Yeah.
Like, we really don't know much. It is rumor.
Yeah.
But I can see the bind they're in. And honestly, do you really think they'd take a ratings haircut if they didn't do hair makeup?
Yeah.
If that got moved, much like the technical awards, a lot of the Tradecraft awards become technical awards.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it's a 2-hour show and it's more celebrity, which is what drives a lot of those eyeballs to these things, That's
true.
So I think, and I found it fascinating that this just immediate, how dare you? This is like, it's the Oscars. We've had this conversation before. I think I've made my opinion about all these award shows are kind of BS. If they think they got to tweak, because otherwise they're going to be, not irrelevant like the Globes should be just through racism and, weird ass club. But I think they got a right to give it a shot. And honestly, like, to blame the public for something the public doesn't like, I don't see where we're going with that.
Yeah.
There's and yes, between a conflict between the public, who they're saying, come watch our show, and the tastes of the Academy member, guess what?
There's a great...
the public's winning that one.
Sort of tied into it, but there's a great Futurama quote where Bender, they're doing some sort of movie awards, and I can't find it, on any IMDb quotable page or whatever. And I had it written down at one point, and it's like, don't worry about this part. It's those boring technical awards like writing.
Anyway. Oh yeah, like it is, and there's always that tension. I do want to draw something to everyone's attention. I love Sean put here. There's been some great comments, which we will touch back to, folks. But I want to highlight Sean's here. Love what he says here. I'm down for a celebration of all good films, but it's still a competition. That's so odd. And yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, part of the draw to a show like a live show is what's going to happen. What's going to be the big flub is something like it's NASCAR for pretty people, like,
yeah.
So, and yeah, for our eyes, even last year's Oscars, most fun I had was with you guys and Sean and the Upside Dan. I don't think he was able to make it, but a couple other folks in our chat, of course, Dan and Cody.
Cody.
Were able to, and that was a great time. And we had viewers, just predicting the event, and that was a crap ton of fun. I'd rather let time tell us, let our own tastes and time tell us what's a great film, what's a legendary film,
and it changes.
Ms. Jenkins, yeah. And then we've got we have a new chatter. Perhaps a bit of having a little taking the piss on us, but we've got a new chatter. I just want to quickly highlight Mr. Lou, is that Sassel? Lou Sassel or Lou Sassy? Anyway, good to see you here. Apparently, he's worried that we're pandering to China. I don't think you and I specifically, Jim, but perhaps this show. And that this movie, I'm assuming he's thinking about the movie
Shang-Chi.
we're going to talk about. But anyway, we will get back to that later. I do have one. Do I have one more story? Yes, last but not least. All right, let me see if I can't get this one up. Okay, last but not least, everyone. Let's get me out of the way. Let's get this up here. Okay, for those of you who don't know, Michael Chabon, celebrated author. He was, where is it? The people, best known author of Wonder Boys and The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. He also has a number of film writing credits, most recently as part of the writing team of Star Trek Picard. So been around for decades, well-respected, an author, a man of letters. Well, at the same time, a man who really kind of, enjoys writing for us peasants. So I'm just a fan of the man, fan of the writer.
I have a couple of his books in this room. I can't find them, but they're somewhere.
I have one on my Kindle as we speak, on the cover of my Kindle.
There we go.
Okay. Anyway, he was not a fan of Variety's review of Denis Villeneuve's Dune. Apparently the passive-aggressive title says it all. Spectacular and engrossing until it isn't. Now, I recommend to everyone they read the whole thread. It's a bit of a schlep, but nothing too crazy. It all ends right about here. But I do kind of get where he's coming from. Jim, you can see that on the screen, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to cherry pick a couple of things. He excerpts the opening paragraph of the review, and he's like, okay, in Dune, Denis Villeneuve's droolingly anticipated, eye-bogglingly vast adaptation of Frank Herbert's 1965 cult sci-fi novel. And I love this. I love it. Chabon referring to that directly. Note the disparagement implicit in the very first clause of those who have been anticipating this film. Drooling is for morons, gluttons, St. Bernards, zombies, and fanboys. I almost stopped reading right there. I'm glad he didn't, because he has more to say, and he points out more things. Now, there's some nonsense about the world building here, but I really love this. From the review, here's one useful definition of great sci-fi fantasy film. It's one in which the world building is awesome, but not more essential than the storytelling. In the first two Star Wars films, those dynamics were in perfect sync. They were as well in The Dark Knight and the Mad Max films. Blade Runner, in its way, is an amazing movie, but its world building packs more punch than its transcendental neo-noir noodlings. I then Chabon says, comments, Blade Runners, transcendental neo-noir noodlings. That must have really bugged him. Lack punch. Okay. Almost stopped reading here. Note, prophylactic cool kid shrug of in its way. Jim, did you get a chance to read the whole thread? Like, I know you were out at the lake and everything, but did you get a chance to read the thread?
No, sorry. No, I didn't. I was, it's a bit of
I strongly recommend it.
Okay.
He really does make a great, it makes a case, and this is something, I can talk to you directly. I think he makes, Jim, a great case for something you and I have talked about, mostly on the more fanboy kind of critic, where it's like jamming every superlative adjective they can, the overuse of masterpiece and brilliant and Oscar contender. I think we've watched, we've heard of a good 60 or 70 Oscar contenders, and we're barely into September in a slow year.
Yeah.
That might be a little hyperbole on my part, but I think you know what I mean. Here he's talking about that other part, that snide kind of, that backhanded compliment, the I'm too cool for school. And also I would say lazy, also just kind of a lazy write. Like even, and this was where I had commented earlier on the weekend, Herbert's novel came out in 1965. Almost universally acclaimed then, not by just the sci-fi press, but by, the Chicago Tribune, the New York Times, was recognized as great right out of the gate. Since then, 20 million copies just of that book. And we're not talking about the series, just of that book in a multitude of languages. Has now not one, but two big name, big screen, big budget adaptations to its under its belt, plus a pretty solid sci-fi miniseries, plus a million sequels, plus. I mean, this cult sci-fi novel. And I was like, I really did. It was like, it was just that comment where it kind of hooked me, and I'm like, ooh, this is going to be good. Because you've got that writer's just trying to slap something together to give a tone and, project that he just doesn't like this stuff.
Yeah.
And last thing I'll say before I hand it over to you, at the bottom of his rant, and let's focus on it one more time. Okay. I like this. I hate to single out this review, which is merely typical of the general slackness of most, not all, contemporary arts reviewing. A critic has two jobs, and this is something that reminds me of you, Jim. A critic has two jobs. One is to write the review. The other is to rise to the occasion. I think that's something you and I have talked a lot about, the idea of being present to the film so that you really are critiquing it on its face. Not just going, well, I don't like this kind of movie. I think all these kind of movies are stupid, so I'm going to run down this movie. Anyway, what do you think?
I do some, I've done more in the past, but I've done some freelance writing, and a lot of it was for trade magazines. So I'd write about tractors, or literally for potato magazines. Magazines for potato producers and stuff. And anytime you're given, and sometimes I would pitch things, like when I went to PEI, I did a story on the potato museum there, and I thought, oh, this is cool, I'll do something. Give me a sort of a little mission to do while I was out there. But a lot of time, it's not just potatoes. Like I've written for 60 different publications, but a lot of times an editor, if you haven't pitched it yourself, they'll say, hey, do you want to write on this? And you'll often think, ugh, it doesn't sound very interesting. It's my job to get interested in it. And one of my soft skills, I think, is to be able to be interested in anything. So yeah, you sort of align yourself with the project, and you don't go to a country music concert and think, God, I hate country music. You just, you have to sort of you sort of, any genre is valid. And you take every genre as a genuine genre, right? And then you go from there. But I discounting into the.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Just discounting entire things seems to be a little bit of an odd practice.
Well, and who knows? I don't want to, overlabel the writer of the review, right? I'm more nervous of that because we've seen it before. But even if you're like kind of, and I think we've run into this on our show, Jim, where we're not a fan of the genre, but this is an excellent example of the genre.
Yeah.
Oh. Hello, Ms. Fowler. Apparently,
she's
making
fun.
They missed the Potato Museum in PEI.
It's in O'Leary. It's literally an O'Leary PEI.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what though? I'm not sure she's just having fun at your expense, Jim.
No, I think she should go
Richard
back.
And Katie do not take traveling lightly. They make sure they get the full experience.
That's for sure.
All right. Okay.
In a great
Jim.
way. Yeah.
So do you, like even if you qualify it, say, listen, I'm not a fan of the genre, but boy, it met genre expectations. People, see people within this scene really kind of get into it. This is why they get into it. May not be for me, but I like also the way, your job to get excited or just to kind of look at it a different way and say, hey, it still delivers X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
Attack it for some of the themes it's got. As I regularly do. But, try and separate some of these things so that you're looking when you're critiquing it, you're looking at it honestly on its merits.
Yes.
Not, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Okay.
They're cool. Anyway, folks, this will be the whole thread, Chabon's thread. And it's just a great bit of writing. It's one of those things where you kind of look at the variety writer. Who knows? Maybe the writer is going, cool, I just got crapped all over by Michael Chabon. Look at this. I think a decent writer would probably kind of go, wow, I could learn a lot from this, and then this is where he said this about me. Maybe not.
Well, maybe he needs to get together with Patty Jenkins and come up with a new project. I connected two stories.
You did, Mr. Chavoyko. Well, I think we had kind of a line through all three. Okay. I think that's about it for now. Jim, I'm going to take over the screen.
Sounds good.
And let's get into the beat of the show we're actually here to talk about. And that is, of course, Shang-Chi. Here's the log line from IMDb. Actually, I kind of modified it a little, so it's a bit of a mishmash. Uh-oh. Anyway, well, IMDb's log line was a little weak. All right. Kung Fu master Shang-Chi is forced to confront his past after being discovered by the secret Ten Rings organization. Folks, the basic gag here is you've got this Sean guy, a remarkably fit and intelligent car hop, and his buddy, whose character's name I forget
Katie.
Right now.
Katie.
Thank you, Katie. Katie Fowler, Katie Awkwafina, played by Awkwafina, who's also just hanging out with them as another car hop, even though she has an honors degree from Berkeley. And that's basically what they're doing. They're pissing away their time doing joyrides, not trying to aspire to anything until hanging out in karaoke bars until a rather interesting conflict, which I'm sure everyone's seen, at least in the trailer, if they haven't seen the film, where they're attacked by several Kung Fu masters in a bus, one of those flexi buses, the streets of San Francisco. And of course, there's a race through the streets, even as they're having a Kung Fu showdown and Sean, apparently he's not just some slacker, but might have some skills. So and then of course it leads into, I gotta go warn my sister. Katie, what do you mean you have a sister? I didn't even know you could kick ass like this. So there's the basic gag of the film. It is a Marvel. It's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Here are the players. It was directed by Destin. Here, just a sec here. Destin Daniel Cretton. Written by Dave Callaham, Destin Daniel Cretton, and Andrew Lanham. It stars Simu Liu and Awkwafina, but it also stars Meng'er Zhang, Fala Chen, Florian Munteanu. Oh, really screwed that one up. My bad. Benedict Wong, Michelle Yeoh, Ben Kingsley, and Tony Leung. As far as its ideological ingredients, everyone, let's bring them up here. Okay. Ideological ingredients. The social nutrition checklist. Would it earn a reframe stamp? No. Is it union made? As a matter of fact, it is. Does it pass the Bechdel test? You know what? In a couple of very barely's. Oh, Jim, you're about to say something?
I think it did. And I sort of filed it away in my head. And
it was a couple of barely's.
Yeah.
Like just barely's, but it made it. Like Michelle Yeoh and Meng'er Zhang, Shu Ling and Auntie, can't remember, in the village. They have a moment. The granny and the Awkwafina have a bit of a, there are a couple of moments. And yeah, it's not like no one had anything to do, but it does. It does pass this test.
I think Awkwafina is asking the sister about her own life, which is kind of refreshing. Anyway.
Yeah. Dad issues came up though.
Yeah.
I was like, I couldn't count that one, but it was refreshing. It wasn't all, but my father, they were having a conversation. But does class consciousness, is there class consciousness here? Oh, that's a big fat no. It's not that kind of movie. It's not that kind of movie. All right. So with that in mind, Jim, let's give me your quick review. Give me your
certainly.
Give me your take on it, man.
I was trying to avoid any kind of spoilers here because we're not in the no spoiler zone yet. But, we are in
the no spoiler zone.
Yeah.
We will be in the spoiler zone soon.
Anytime a movie gets, such kind of early high praise and high scores in Rotten Tomatoes on both sides of the aisle, and then you have your own sort of high expectations, that's not always great for a movie to have. It's sort of you go in super keyed up, and I went with my son, and we were both the same way. Now, we both really liked it, and the thing that I think impressed me the most, there was a lot of fighting in this. There's 4 key fight scenes we'll talk about later in the spoiler zone, perhaps, and those were, they incorporated elements of Jackie Chan, and I would argue ballet / ice dancing / figure skating in when you use dance to tell a story. And there was a couple of those scenes that I thought were really impressive. In fact, I sort of wish that the whole thing was one long fight and you didn't have any dialogue or anything in between.
None of that almost chit chat getting in the way.
Like an opera, like no spoken lines. It's all sung. But in any case, so I really liked it. Obviously, Simu Liu can hold a movie on his own. Awkwafina, I when she came on the scene wasn't entirely sure about her, but she's won me over in a couple of movies now. Did it have some issues? I think the third act was a little bit overinflated. I didn't know about what happened in the third act, so it sort of caught me a little off guard, but I'm willing to go along for the ride. Like if it takes me there, I'm willing to go. I sort of thought that they made the bad guy a little bit, or this situation a little bit too heady there. There's a couple other things too that were bugging me. I don't think it's as existential enough. My dad's 1,000 years old, and here's my aunt who lives in a secret realm.
Who
Pretty
might
cool,
be
eh?
4,000 years old.
And then, if I mention anything else, those are spoilers. But there's sort of not a lot of like, holy crap, how is this? Anyway, and I mean, they do a little bit of that, but and then there's some of the usual sort of Marvel fingerprints all over it, and there's some issues with Western depictions of the hero and what they can and can't get away with. I think there was a missing scene. We can talk about that later. But anyway, I really liked it. And when it got back towards the end, again, trying not to spoil it, it sort of got back to that early energy that it had. So I quite liked the epilogue there. But really good. I'm totally looking forward to more of this character, and oh, Canada.
Jim, I enjoyed it so much. I saw it twice.
Whoa!
I saw it Thursday night, and then I saw it this afternoon, ostensibly to make sure that I give everyone, that memory did not fade, and perhaps I went and saw it again today. It is interesting how the second time around you start to see some of the flaws. They pop out a little. They pop out. But that said, I think part of the reason they pop out is there's so few flaws in this film that they become really clear. That's it. Getting back to it, I had a great time. Yeah. I felt like I was on a similar emotional ride with those great action set pieces where it was stupid exciting. The world building was great. The Chinese Asian vibe that they were giving felt, and we'll have to wait for more commentary to come out to see how, was anything actually like offensive but I felt because the leads were Asian, that it didn't feel like Western cultural tourism. I felt myself really sympathizing with Shang-Chi, really sympathizing with his sister, Xiling. I think Xiling or Shuling. Played by Meng'er Zhang, who I cannot wait to see in other movies. Every time she was on the screen, it's like, damn, you're just exciting to watch. She just has such great fucking presence. While at the same time, you're not doing something we talked about. Remember the Tomorrow War, where at times it's, Chris Pratt looked maybe a little lost in the frame, like kind of what a nice guy there. Here, Simu doesn't give us that. But I felt like I was on an emotional journey, like we jammed all three Star Wars, like episode 4, 5, 6, the original trilogy. There's so many beats without it being like a knockoff. I don't mean it that way, but there's so many, maybe not beats, but elements in there. This idea of a father, a bad father, a brother and sister separated, the idea they got to come together to get the big win, the fact that there's atonement, there's some great relationship building. I had a great deal of sympathy for all these characters. The only thing I would say on the downside, although we'll get into more detail later, I did feel that at times, well, two things. One, at times they didn't have enough for Awkwafina to do. Why that is, we can speculate later, because it gets into specific plot points and everything, but I felt at times they didn't. And then now early, you can see this. Like, I'm not spoiling anything here. There are scenes though where it's like, did they have Awkwafina and Simu on set the same day? Like, especially some of the stuff. Like, it looks like inserts, maybe reshoot stuff. Like, she's looking away from the camera and talking, and it's all just kind of almost like weird kind of busybody stuff. And it's like, I'm not sure they're in the same actual room. I know we're being shown the same room. And there were other parts where it's like, yeah, she seemed disconnected from the film. You know, and anything else, like I said, it kind of revolves around Awkwafina, but I can't say it's her performance or, you know, it's just, yeah, I think they just didn't maybe quite figure out how to really exploit her, you know. Why that is, who knows. But that said, I had a fucking fantastic time. I did see out of my eye somebody about top 10 in the MCU from Lost in the Reel,
These
from
lists.
Sean at Lost in the Reel, and the Upside Down. And I'm like, I don't know about Jim. I don't know about you, but I can certainly say the best summer movie of this summer. And I liked Black Widow for different reasons. And so I don't want to compare them head to head, but this is going to stick with me for a while, even though I can see, here's another hot take. I'm like, as I was coming out of the theater, I'm like, boy, local kung fu, a lot of little kids are a lot of little boys and girls are gonna want to learn kung fu all of a sudden. No.
Gonna find a lot of broken fences leading away from the movie theater.
Yeah, no, I did. I got choked up at the right times. I felt it ended well. Like, I felt everything was properly resolved. Yeah, like you said, these films can have their faults, but I really enjoyed it and wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it out there. Maybe they're just watching this later when I do the quick review. Get your derriere in a theater if it's safe where you are. Watch this movie. Watch it. Very good. Don't wait until it's on streaming. No. Jim, like you said earlier, boy, this is a movie that can own you, especially if you're in the right environment. So
yeah. A couple things when you mentioned Awkwafina being separate. I felt the same way about some of the early Ben Kingsley scenes where he seems a little bit apart from the rest, and they actually don't. I don't think there's any one shot of him and Simu just sort of, talking with each other. It's they're in the car, and the camera goes to the back seat and the front seat, and so I sort of did get that same sense of disconnection there. I was going to say something else too, but I'm going to see it a second time because I promised my wife I would take her on a not busy night because the whole COVID thing sort of freaks her out. And we were in, what they do here in Canada is they give you a couple seats and they sort of create a moat around you. It's like Minesweeper. So you can't sit in the immediate seats, or you're not allowed to, or supposed to sit in the immediate seats around you. So, I'm sort of, I'm curious to see. It's fun when you go with somebody different to see their, their opinion of it as well. But, the other thing too, and I'm surprised Lost in the Reel hasn't thrown this back at us. There's a Marvel superhero with the name Sean.
Oh!
I think, does he spell it with an U or a W?
No, he's SHAWN.
Oh, yes, that's right. Close enough.
Let's violate some more personal, more of Sean's personal privacy. Apparently I'm fine with it as well.
As for the spelling, I'll allow it.
All right. I think that it's now time to Actually, I'm going to take a quick scan, Jim, on our chat just to
Yeah,
see if
absolutely.
there's any hot take that we should. Oh, look at that. Sean from San Francisco.
Yes.
And not living that far from it now.
We won't say where.
We'll just keep digging ourselves deeper.
I'm discreet.
We're a small
sometimes.
channel. Okay, I did quickly just do before we get into the rest of it, guys. Let's see. We've said hi to Richard and Katie. We said hi to everyone. I think though. I'm assuming here, Sean, was when he said exactly, Jim, that was your hot. You're
talking about Patty Jenkins.
Your quick reply, the Wonder Woman 1984.
Yes,
anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he follows it up with, and yeah, I would agree. Yeah, there are, and as a matter of fact, everyone else's Kate review has come out. Mine's coming out tomorrow. Jim and I may be diving into it at a later date. To be announced later. Okay, Lost in the Real. Sean says there are a lot of great films on Netflix that are far better than WW84, like a Netflix product.
Mm-hmm.
And Upside Dan says, yeah, I don't know why she said that. Neither do I. I suspect she'll, well, who knows? Maybe she'll double down. Or maybe we'll get, I still don't agree with Scorsese, Jim, but maybe we'll get a response like a real fulsome reply. I'd say, here, okay, you want to know what I mean? I mean this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I think blah, 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 blah.
You know, it could have been one sentence taken out of a 2-hour-long interview or something like that. That often, you know, the people that are the interviewee doesn't determine what the headline or
it was part of a larger panel thing.
Takeaway,
but
yeah.
Apparently it was, she was asked
She
and she dug in.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It wasn't
She owned it.
little,
Yeah.
I don't know, kind of fake. Well, no, let me tell you how awful they are. I'm not sure, and that's why I didn't talk about it when we were talking about it, Jim, earlier. I didn't get into there's a kind of an inference that maybe her nose is still out of joint about the same day streaming and it's like she didn't say anything about that. It's a bit of a stretch, you know. But anyway, what else we got? Richard. Another witty man. It was one of the reasons, Jim, best chat on the internet. Has she never heard of direct to DVD? Hardly a new trend.
Yes.
Well, and something I don't know if you follow them, Jim, or anyone else. I'm a big fan of the Breakfast All Day podcast. It's 3 LA-based critics, and
I think I've seen a few.
Yeah, they. One of them, I can't remember his name, but one of them made the point. It's like, listen, back in the day, all these studios put out 60, 70, because that was one of Patty Jenkins' comments was, well, they're putting all their money in a few tent poles, and whereas Netflix is just throwing stuff at the wall. And it's like, that has been the LA way since it began. You know, and he was very specific, talking about the silent era where they're shooting 5 pictures a day, you know. Taking
everything used to be, the Doors put out 3 records a year, you know, like that used to be the way that they just volume.
Well, I mean, but what, and this is, I mean, you almost want to say, Jesus, Patty, read a history of the cinema, of film, because things changed in the 60s, but it doesn't mean that Hollywood isn't making a lot of movies. They've always made a lot of movies. The label, the person who's taking first credit, the studio changes. But even some of the stuff we've seen on Netflix was produced by someone else. And Netflix bought it because it fit them better than it fit a screen, right? Like, I mean, but the actual volume of output really hasn't changed that much. It's just where it goes first has changed, but this has been going on, much like Richard said. You know, have you not heard of DVD? Direct to videotape. You know, anyway. It looks like Shashank said hi, and Shashank said goodbye. All right. I think otherwise, I think
Mondays.
we've gotten everyone. As far as if is the question, you know what? The question is, Sean said, is it in your top 10 MCU movies?
Sure.
Upside Down said, yes, it is.
Are those for us, or are they talking to each other? I'm not sure.
No, I think it is. I think it is for us. What do you,
I when I said, oh, these lists, it wasn't out of exasperation. It was just that I'm not a great lister. Like some of these people, it's almost become, to use that phrase again, a bit of a soft skill. Is like some people are really good at them. I think to properly list it, you would probably have to watch all, 28 movies? You'd probably have to watch them all in like over Christmas, or
and where do you fit Loki in? And
yeah. And by the time you get, through them all, so basically I'm saying it's a really tricky task, because and it's probably not very objective. Like you're subject to like the type of hero you like and the type of humor you have, and I like Taika Waititi, for instance, that kind of thing. And so does that, how does that affect your ranking? So I appreciate people who can do it and put thought into it and logic it out, and have good arguments for everything. But I find it super intimidating, frankly. If I could save time in a bottle, I would sort of pause, and I'd be able to watch them all through and be able to properly rank them. But is it in my top? I'd say it's in the top tier, like the top. Here's another question.
Well, okay.
I'll let you answer that one. Here's another one just to put a pin in. What if this one was released 10 movies ago? Or 15 movies ago? Or like, the first half of the Marvel rollout, right?
Yeah.
You'd probably be competing with Black Panther a little bit in terms of, having some diversity and that kind of thing. But I might have made it's making a great big impression now. So that's a bit of a moot point, but
I think, you know what? I'm going to say I reject the question.
Okay.
I don't mean it to be pissy about it.
No.
More of all the complications you talked about, I agree 100%. That squares them, or that adds like another dimension to the complication. Like it just becomes impossible. What if, we did this in the 30s and they didn't have this? Oh, but the effects wouldn't have been as good. And.
Yeah. Well, and
Who
the reason why
was Awkwafina? Well, let's talk about casting now. Who would be the Awkwafina of? Who would be the Simu of?
Yeah.
You know what? There's like I reject the question, and I'm going to go even further. Like one of the things I thought about as we were coming to this show is like kind of, what about Black Widow? Because I was big on Black Widow.
Yeah.
Not as big as I am on this, but so much of it is the time, the context of when you're watching. They are slightly different movies. Let's say you're going to the same restaurant. It's the same chef, but it's still a different item it's a different menu item. We're going to the MCU restaurant, but it's that chef. It's the way they buy ingredients, all that kind of thing. It's a certain style, but it's still a different menu item. So to say which I like better, I felt like this tonight. Boy, or, sometimes when a beer really goes down right, like it's not that it's a good beer.
Yeah.
It's really going down right. It's just hot enough, but not too hot. Like it was, Shang-Chi really went down well.
Yeah.
So
you and the food.
Well, let's move on. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, folks. We are moving on. We're well out of the quick review. We're so glad you're with us, though. We are going to move into the spoiler zone, but first, for the first time on our show, we are going to take a 1-minute break. In part because I need to get a beverage, but in part because guess what? I have a commercial to show you guys.
Oh my gosh.
So let me cue this up, and then I'll chat a bit more about it. And then, yes, we could call this a sponsor message, I suppose, Jim?
I guess so, yeah. I think I know what it is.
We've heard them all. the rambling leave a voicemail message with too many ums and ahs, the narrated video with more reverb and distortion than narration, not to mention the podcast host who seems a lot less engaged in the subject than they could be. Of course, audio like this leads to lost messages, low views, and no downloads, which really means lost customers and lost sales. Now that's where I come in. I'll provide you with a professionally recorded, well-spoken, and engaging voiceover, properly calibrated to your script and audience, and at a fantastic price. All you need to do is click continue so I can get to work making a great recording for you. That's right, folks. A little self-produced commercial there for you. I've started a side hustle. It's something I've actually dabbled in over the last year and change, but I've kind of recommitted to it. So I actually have a kind of wide Fiverr gig lineup. I will put links in the description, but if you need or you know anyone who needs voiceover services, I would be happy to accommodate you at a great price. So anyway, there you go. There's our first commercial. Did we lose anyone?
I don't think so.
Yeah, looks like we, our several loyal fans, part of the members, all citizens of the best chat on the internet are sticking with us. Yep. Okay, where are we now, my friend? Yes. Let's get into it. The craft. Why don't you start, Jim? What did you think as far as the look, the feel, the sound?
Yeah, in terms of craft, I think you have to look at the with something like this involving a lot of martial arts. You have to look at the fights, and then now that we're in the spoiler zone. The 4 fights that I thought were dynamite was the first one, the one that introduces us to
the bus.
The bus.
The dad. The big backstory of the dad. Not that there was any fights. That was more like a Lord of the Rings moment.
More specifically in terms of fights, the ones that I liked, the bus.
Yep.
The side of the building, or the in Macau. I thought that was something that I'd like to watch again, sort of in slow motion.
Like you said, Jackie Chan.
Yeah, and there's one moment. There's one moment in particular when this Shang-Chi character goes up above the bar that people hang on the bus, and that to me it reminded me of Jackie Chan using. There's one movie. Don't ask me which one it is, but he uses a shopping cart, and some guy's trying to get him, and he's stuck in a shopping cart. And you know how you can kick out the back of the shopping cart? He's in and out and in and out. And it totally reminded me of that. I thought it was super inspired.
Rumble in the Bronx, I think that's from.
Was it? Hey, the one
I think, but I don't know.
Vancouver with mountains passing as New York City. But that was great. Macau, that was a great fight in the outside the fight club. He's sort of with his sister. I don't like heights, so I had to sort of hide my eyes a couple times. And then the other 2 that I thought were quite different is when the father meets the mother for the first time. And it turns it in from an antagonistic fight into a bit of a like, is there something else going on here?
Which apparently, I sent you the link, Jim. Apparently that's kind of a thing, and it does remind me of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yes, yeah.
But apparently that's an Asian filmmaking trope, the fighters becoming lovers.
Yeah, and I thought that was really well handled. Now that you mentioned Crouching Tiger, it sort of makes me want to watch that again. And then the last one was when Shang-Chi fights Ying-Nan, his aunt. They're sort of, they're not really fighting. They're sort of having a like a practice skirmish or something like that. Sparring match.
Sparring.
And, so he is, he's picking up, family kind of pointers from his, and she's telling him you have to sort of incorporate both sides of yourself, not unlike a certain girl with a deaf family in Massachusetts, but she's got incorporate.
Still my favorite movie of the year to date.
Oh, still, yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Not enough martial arts, but anyway,
I got misty in this one because I committed to the emotional relationships, the emotional journey. I was open to that, but nothing has made me cry like Cody. Not yet.
Yeah.
Not this year.
Yeah. So those 4 fights. I'm doing 5. Those 4 fights were great, and they advanced the story. I mean, it wasn't just a placeholder for 5 minutes of bam, 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 bam. It was actually stuff was going on. But that I almost wish they didn't show so much of the bus one in the trailer, because it was such a great scene, so inspired, so many things going on at the same time. Elements of Speed, of course, are a little hearkening of the movie Speed. But you see that. I don't know if I mentioned this before. Going with my son. Ooh, sorry, leg cramp. Oh, yikes! My leg just cramped up on me. But seeing it with my son,
I'm impressed that you could get up. I would be sliding down and then just sort of disappearing. It's oh god!
I just stretched out my leg here, but I counted, I think, 7. Whoa. that sound effect that your son makes when you go to a movie with him. That was something cool or neat, or I'm looking forward to this scene or whatever.
That's some punch.
Yeah. So
that aforementioned punch that apparently Blade Runner lacked.
Yes. So I mean, those parts were the greatest part of the movie. The craft, I think, in terms of the look, I'd have to watch the third act again, and the battle scenes. We unfortunately had really crappy seats. We were sort of right in front of it. We were in the neck breakers right in front. So, I'll when I go with my wife again, I'll hopefully have better seats. But those are a couple of the things that I had. A lot of people are talking about what a great soundtrack it is. And, sometimes you get lost in it with all the, mostly it was referring to the hip hop songs and that sort of thing, rather than the sort of the inscrutable Chinese harps and things like that. But, so there's a couple things just to throw up there. We can talk about maybe the performances later, but what did you think of the craft? What stood out for you?
I was impressed. Like everything was to Marvel standards. The acting, except for Awkwafina, and now that we're past the spoiler zone, I'll get into a bit more detail there. But everything was up to Marvel standards. The things that stood out to me, the fighting and minimal wire work. Or if there was a lot of wire work, it didn't look like there was a lot of wire work. A lot of the fighting seemed really grounded.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Still like in a lot of kung fu movies, it's like, does anyone get a bruise? Like, is anyone getting actually hurt? But it's not that kind of movie. Like I don't want to. I'm not making a critique of the genre, maybe instead of the film. But yeah, it seemed grounded. It'll be a long time, Jim, I think, before we see. Yeah, or I shouldn't say it'll be a long time. We're going to see that bus scene, and we're going to go Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
And I think that's great, even though you're absolutely right. There's a million, Ip Man and, Jackie Chan, and there's a lot of other films that inform this film. Mm-hmm. Somebody else I read recently said something along the lines of, no one can incorporate others like Marvel can. But they do. They synthesize it. They give us something where we're like, like that. And like in the first 20 minutes of the film, and it's like, holy crap, I'm seeing awesome action right now.
Yeah.
They're not jerking me around. And it was outstanding. And it felt real, as ridiculous as it is. The other thing I thought was also just outstanding, like standout, the costuming. The costuming always seemed of a place, and it looked cool without being, again, and like I said, Asian writers, Asian commenters will, inform us but it didn't feel pandering like you meet an Asian other than the 10 Rings folks, and even in the crazy fight club that the sister made and everything, it's all, you meet them outside on the street, they look like anyone else out on the side of the street. And you and I've been to China maybe decades apart, but still it's like, yeah, they're not, the West sometimes gives us an image of street life that's like, it's kind of crazy there, but that's nobody I saw looked like that. While at the same time giving us part of what we expect out of a kung fu movie, right? And especially when they got to the village, was it Talo, thank you. They get to Shangri-La. They get to Xanadu. And it feels, I loved the big lions. I loved it felt weird and cool and real and colorful. It had pop, and and interestingly enough, at no time did they ever present it to us or felt like, oh, this is such a fragile space and it's going to be destroyed. Whereas a lot of times when we're shown those things, it's the fragility of the space is emphasized, whether it be through character dialogue, but even in its presentation. I'm like, this space is not fragile. Yes, there's a big bad guy, but the space isn't fragile. So I thought the production design stood out. Fighting. And yes, Meng'er Zhang, Tony Leung did what he needed to do. Delivered, I think, a pretty solid villain, and a villain that you was like, this guy, I always know where my children are, so I liked him as a villain. I liked him as a complicated villain. His wife, she was, what little we saw of her,
she was awesome.
Great. She was fantastic.
Yeah, she kicked ass.
Michelle Yeoh. Yep. Yeah, Michelle Yeoh, right?
Michelle Yeoh,
yeah. Michelle Yeoh was fantastic. And sometimes when you get those characters that are kind of dumped on us really late in a movie, they can feel really kind of the actor. Sometimes you feel like, well, you're giving us you're giving us a performance, but you're not. You're that's what you're doing. You're giving us a performance. You've not prepared. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel connected, Again, the only, and it is there's a couple, I wish, you know what? I'm going to put a pin in that. That's more story. But Awkwafina, wish they gave her more to do. I part of me is like, why didn't they make her the driver? Like, not just the driver a couple times. Figure out some way that her driving skills could be used in the third act.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell, man? Because sticking her with the bow and arrow and everything, and disconnecting her from the other two. Although at times you're like kind of going, well, there's the odd one out. Especially when Simu and Meng'er Zhang were in the same frame. They didn't give her enough to do. It's almost like they didn't know what to do with her. And so at times it didn't, it's not necessarily her performance, but there were times where I'm just like, I'm not buying this at all. And some scenes are literally, I think they either had to reshoot and they didn't have them. They couldn't, for scheduling reasons, have them in the same room, or, there's some scenes especially in the first act, but even in the third act where it's, who knows, maybe they're like, well, we got to give her a bow and arrow or something.
Yeah.
But and you look at her shots, they're always a lot closer.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially when she's on her own. We don't see her in wide, in long shots as much as we do the other two, unless she's with the other two, which actually I'd like to go back with a stopwatch almost and just count, So yeah, that would be, there's my thing on craft, notwithstanding Awkwafina, and that's not on Awkwafina. There were a couple of poignant moments where it's like, the woman can deliver a performance. She's not just jokes.
Mm-hmm.
So but that production design, especially in the third act, especially in Talo, the fight choreography is just chef's kiss on a couple of those fights. Yeah. And it was super cool. We're in a whole film, not one, unlike a G.I. Joe Snake Eyes, where they had a couple of white people just, we got to have some representation. No, we don't. This is awesome. And even until the very end credit scene, like our mid-credit scene, would it be a mid-credit or just the very last scene before we got into the mid-credit scene?
New territory.
Whatever. The only MCU member we see is Benedict Wong, and that's awesome. Like, you're owned by this whole movie. At no time though do I feel like it's exotic or anything. And maybe it's because, especially Awkwafina as an Asian American, and one commentator I read has said, "Listen, this is really an Asian American film. It's not an Asian film. It's an Asian American film." And a lot of the beats are, even some of the sexist stuff, which kind of, a little eye-rolling moment. You don't see that in Chinese cinema like you did here, where the reason Meng'er's Shuling, her character, does is because she's been ignored by her father because she's one of the girls. Like, I'm not saying there isn't sexism in China, but not, that kind of, anyway, there you go. That's my story on craft. Yeah, everything's solid. Some of it's just outstanding.
Yeah.
And you're right, Jim. That bus fight is going to be, I bet you it's going to be one of those things that we'll just remember for decades going, and then there was the bus fight in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, good point. I think we lost Lou Sassel.
I think Lou Sassel showed up for what he wanted to say.
Yes.
let's say, the green troll figure, the sex movie, we all know it, but who knows, maybe he'll pop back in.
Well, the pandering too, I don't think it doesn't seem at all like pandering. It just happens to be a story about Chinese American Asian Americans, and and it's fairly well handled. The thing with Awkwafina's role is that the funny thing is that she sort of loses that sense of humor, that little kind of her irreverence in the third act. And then when they get to the epilogue and they're having drinks with friends, that's what I was talking about earlier. It's back to that sort of that humor and that the sort of the sense of joy from the first two acts that they had. And it was actually like, that's how it was earlier. But anyhow,
she's recovered.
Yeah.
Well, she was in a battle.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Dying, the stakes were high.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's continue with Awkwafina for a second. Not craft. Sorry. The story. And this is it. The story is pretty solid. I do think though, a scene, whether it got cut or I'm just making up a scene that should have been there, I really do think we should have seen, instead of being told, we should have seen Awkwafina, young Awkwafina, and young Sean meet in high school. Yeah. If we saw that there's that missing piece, that would give us some, we'd see this kid kind of, maybe he's about to kick ass, but then she jumps in and he kind of goes, great, I can't be seen, and we have a real moment, and she brings, and she, you got to come to my mom's house, she'll feed you right, blah, 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 and we see a young Awkwafina, and that also a little bit, just give us a taste of how she's into him.
Mm-hmm.
because we never, if we had that, then everything else I think would have given us a little more, given us a little more, emotional attachment to their relationship. Because, and so that, as far as story goes, I think that was one of my biggest criticisms of the piece. It's just like, oh, we needed that connector. What about you? You had mentioned you thought there was missing a scene.
First of all, Dan just commented on what you just said. Fairly.
Rest assured, anything that's complimenting me, I saw long before.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
It was registering my brain as the thing was sliding up. Oh, this might be about me. I think I'm making a good point here. Dan, you were right. That would have been a great scene, wouldn't it? Okay, sorry.
I fully agree with you. This gets the Rob seal of approval. You should get a seal. Dun dun.
Dun dun.
The missing scene for me is a little trickier, and I think it sort of is a little bit of a pulling its punches kind of thing, and I think it's a little bit of a, like I said before, what Western heroes through a Western prism, North American prism, what they're allowed to get away with or what they're allowed to do. So the whole thing is,
I know what this
Shang-Chi's father sends him to kill the man responsible for killing Shang-Chi's mother. So we hear about it and we say, I couldn't go, this big character reveal.
Where you're like, kind of, you're full of shit.
The middle of the third act, just before the grand battle, he goes, I'm not who you think I am. Remember I said I couldn't go through with it? Yeah. Well, I went through with it. And I'm not saying that the movie's lesser for it. I'm just, am I? I would have preferred even just 30 seconds, the lead up to it. You don't literally have to show Shang-Chi stabbing an old man to death, an old, gangster to death.
You could, and we've seen this. Heck, The Simpsons was always really good at this. But you could see the lead up as he's going in, as he's remembering it. She's asking, or he's telling her. And then we have a flashback of him about to do the deed, and then cut to, I couldn't go through with it. We as audience members would all be like, oh, that's bullshit. Which I kind of called BS on at the time. It's like, nice bit of acting. I think you're not telling us the truth.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden we could have seen the aftermath, blood on the floor, whatever. Yeah. In the third act, when he's like, I got to tell you the truth. He has that moment. Because those are the times when he's trying to integrate his mother and father and that whole yin-yang thing, which I thought was, you could say, integration, the duality of one's existence, is really well represented there. Jumping a little ahead into me.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Jim. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Just even a hint. To let
show us that. Show us that hint, not tell us.
Now, why didn't they do it? Well, I think you'd be playing with the whole idea of having.
Assuming Dan would have loved to have seen that scene as well. So we're just putting that in.
Well, thank you. It's a tricky thing because you're dealing with, American or North American or Hollywood prison movies. Somebody who tries to escape from the prison, he can never be guilty. Or should never be guilty, right? Most times, I can't remember Escape from Alcatraz. So there's certain things there, you can't be shown to, unless you're, they with something like The Sopranos, they started to put that thing on its head a little bit and focus on other types of characters. Yeah. And they've had anti-heroes in the past, of course, but I just think it would have been, I think by doing it this way, you're sort of pulling your punches a little bit. But it's a bigger question. What can a hero be allowed to be seen doing? It sort of reminds me of Spider-Man, when, of course, Peter Parker corners the thug who killed Uncle Ben. And of course, in the latest, in the Sam Raimi movie, dude trips over something and falls to his death. or something like that. I can't remember. You know, but it could not have been Peter. Peter can't possibly raise his hand in anger or murder somebody in anger. It's not that Shang-Chi didn't kill people in this movie. He was throwing people off the side of the casino.
But they're all masked. They're all stormtroopers.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyway.
That's a freebie there.
So a couple of missing scenes from us to you, the producers of the movie.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe they did testing and they're like, oh, God, okay, we'll get rid of that. Can we get them together at least for half an hour and they'll have a moment? Great. And it's always tough, these really big movies, how they're developed, how they play out. Because even the fight choreography, you know, they're like almost like different styles.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting tidbit, folks. Meng'er Zhang married one of they're called fight designers, fight choreographers, married one of them, met on this show, and apparently they got married on set.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
There you go. If you're thinking you had a chance with Miss Zhang, you'll have to wait that out.
There you go.
May not be a good strategy. Plus, she's in Singapore. Okay. Jim, anything else you want to talk about story? Yeah, I got to admit, there's just not even coming back to it and kind of going, there's just not a lot of, there's no big plot holes. I mean, you got to suspend disbelief multiple times because, because
dragons and whatever.
The dragon was awesome.
Yeah.
That dragon that was awesome. That was just such a great, Asian dragon.
Yeah.
You know, a positive life force dragon, looked cool. You also made me think of the Never-Ending Story, just the whiskers and the Anyway, sorry, you were.
Or it made me think of the D&D manual that had the different styles. You know, it goes deep into the
lore,
physiological differences between European dragons and Chinese dragons. Sort of reminds me of the Stephen Colbert joke that the Wikipedia entry for lightsaber is longer than that for the Gutenberg Bible. But anyway, the other thing about the Awkwafina character, and here it is. There's not and this is kind of an interesting choice because you don't always see this. There's not a romance, except for the parents, in this movie. Am I? At least not with the lead character.
There is. It is right at the beginning, the friends and the grandma. Interesting. The woman who played her was one of my favorite movies of all time. Is still the Joy Luck Club.
Oh,
and her fucking character from the Joy Luck Club was just so awesome.
Yeah. But it's interesting to have. There's a lot to do in this movie, but it's interesting that there wasn't that sort of instant, we got to hook, the writers say, we got to hook this guy up with somebody. Now, the Awkwafina
but I
character...
think that they're implying, though, that this is what it was something that's missing between those two, because it is both of them, because they're both we're just friends.
Yeah,
I don't...
Well, and then I was wondering if she was a stand-in for the sister, whether the character of Shang-Chi or Sean.
If those two characters were spies, it'd be like, they're getting together.
Yeah. But,
for sure.
Anyway, so that's just one other thing there too.
But that, again, going back to that first scene, Jim, that missing scene right at the beginning, then you could see, because we didn't see enough of, Awkwafina is not hanging out just because she's hanging out because this is her guy. He, of course, has to lay low. She's she could be bumming around at better jobs than Car Hop. I mean, I got that play. The friends did it. The family did it. And it was like, when are you guys going to get together? Oh, we're just friends, and they're uncomfortable,
Mm.
Exactly. Even later, I think they could have advanced that a little, given us a little more. And back to that missing scene, Jim.
Yeah.
That very beginning one, right there, they could have done it. They could have given us a little taste right there instead of telling us some BS where they maybe just kind of, got close,
I mean,
instead of, a gratuitous, chest, Simu's very fit young man, and her go, it's like, really? You guys didn't go swimming at all? You're telling me this is the first time you've seen him.
Well, hopefully they'll have a couple other movies that they can, and there was a lot of backstory, so maybe they didn't want to overwhelm with backstory. But anyway, I agree with you. I do agree with you. So the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, and I was sort of on the fence about the Ben Kingsley character of Trevor Slattery / faux Mandarin, I guess. I know Brian had some, points about it, but I mean, he was sort of obviously brought into the third act for comic relief because Awkwafina got a lot more serious in a way.
Well, and I think it was also that they had to figure out a way to get them. There was a travel component. Yeah. How do we, in an entertaining way that doesn't feel totally lame, get him from the X to Y? How do we get him through this impassable bush a couple of days ahead of time without just some magical thing, other than the magical no-headed two-assed fuzzy character
Morris,
which I totally got into. I'm like, that thing is weird yet cute. I'm not creeped out.
Yeah. I was sort of wondering if it was going to enter Jawa or what's the other one? Ewok. Not so much Jawa. Sorry, I take that back. But Ewok territory. Yeah. But it sort of stopped there. Didn't get too cutesy with it, but I mean, it was a little cutesy, but no. I sort of was wondering about his purpose in the story and if he sort of advanced it at all.
Like mechanics.
I guess so. And I can't remember. I guess he survived, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was in a performance. Remember? He's playing dead, and he's like, "Roll over."
That's right.
Performance.
But for
me,
I'm
alive.
One of the neat things is the epilogue when they sort of they go cut right from Tallow and the end of the battle, and then they're back in the club with their couple friend, sort of the judgy couple.
Their other couple.
Their other couple friend.
Their other couple.
They're having a little double date and having drinks, and they're saying, "Okay, then there's these soul suckers, blah 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 blah." And then I thought,
and then I finally took the shot.
It was like a full circle thing. It was really nice because it led back to that early energy at the start of the movie that you had, and then Awkwafina was sort of back to herself. Katie was back to herself.
Missing scene.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry.
And then of course, and then of course, Benedict Wong is super likable. I love that role. And, he comes in and just, and you can sort of picture yourself in that situation. Like, I look important to my friends. Okay, see you later. I'm going to another dimension or whatever. Bam.
I'll text you.
I'll text you. I'll Venmo you the cash.
Yeah. What I also enjoyed was Simu's ability, and let's not take away from the director here, but Simu's ability and the way the choices that were made by him and the filmmakers, that I bought, like even all he's accomplished, he managed to maintain a certain naivete, a bit of shyness to him that it's always really hard to buy from handsome or try to, where it's like, that's a tough one to do. Yeah. That's a tough one for beautiful people to do. But it was like present. I was like, oh yeah, I'm buying that. Sure.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's right.
It had a nice little moment, where he's, present, and it's like, and Benedict Wong knows how to play against, everyone like it. Yeah, it worked. It worked for me.
Yeah. There's a nice couple of scenes too when they. This is more about craft, but just really quick, where I think he was fighting Ying Nana's aunt, or they were. Sorry, don't mind my my fighting gestures. But he was practicing or skirmishing against Ying Nan, and she said something to him, and he kind of went, hmm? He sort of did this contemporary shrug.
Yeah.
Like the American version of the Gallic, the French shrug. And earlier in the movie, Tony Leung's character had done the same thing, did kind of a So there's a little bit of an echo there too that I thought was.
And you see that connection
nice.
To the father and everything.
Yeah.
Listen, time to move on to meaning. We are coming up on we're in our fourth quarter.
Sure.
Let's say of a 2-hour. But first, Jim, I think it is that time to first of all beg for a like. So, folks, if you haven't already, if you wouldn't mind smashing the like button, Jim and I would really appreciate it. Of course, if you haven't already, or you're watching this in a repeat, please subscribe. And last but certainly not least, how are you going to know when our next live show is if you don't ring that bell?
Sorry, it's a little early.
All righty. So let's now talk about the meaning. What do you like? I already kind of teased some of that. I went into that yin yang duality.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, the main character change seemingly is Shang-Chi's change. And there's reflections of the change he's got to make, or aspects of it, in his sister, in Awkwafina's character, Katie, in his father. Those three key characters around. And I think you kind of see that it's all about not just facing the past, but facing oneself. Mm-hmm. The accepting their parents, accepting their family, as part of who they are, good and bad. Mm-hmm. Did you buying that, or? Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I think it's and I don't think he sort of appreciated. Well, he was, obviously out of touch with both sides of his family, and everything that happens in the course of the movie allows him to reconnect with both his mother and his father, right? And
yeah.
So I was sort of making light of it earlier, whereas in Coda, she's got to sort of reconcile both the hearing and the deaf, the non-hearing aspects of her life. I really thought there was a little bit of a parallel there. So at the very end, she sort of, spoiler alert, 2, 3, 4, brings both things together in that sort of final performance. Yeah. But yeah, so I absolutely buy that. I think that's why they held that when he's honest with the Katie character, when he's sort of moping on the lakeside, on the water at night, and he says, I didn't tell you the full story. I think that's part of that, and that's what the timing had to do with, why he said it then too. Yeah. He's like, ooh, I got to be honest with myself about this stuff. I'm not the person you think I am. Am I worthy of being a hero? That kind of thing.
Well, and even that idea of, I've got to let that go, get it off my chest. Let this person who's very important to me, be aware.
Yes.
Part of, sharing some of your darker secrets is, not just to share so that you're better connected to the person you're sharing with, but also to kind of, by putting them out of you, acknowledging them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you there. Just want to take a quick shout out to Curtis, Mr. Judd, Curtis Judd Audio.
Hello,
good seeing you here. Yeah, you are well into the spoiler zone. Great to see you, man. Was there anything else? Like, I was initially, and this is a big thing in the MCU, and initially it's like, boy, a lot of family problems, a lot of daddy problems. This is really about family, which is a big theme in a lot of these, in a number of MCU movies, maybe not all of them, but I definitely think Ant-Man, the Ant-Man movies, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, even the Thor movies.
Yeah.
These family relationships are a big part of what the character's inner struggle is. But I almost like kind of going, nah, maybe that's almost too easy. Yes, it's there, but what do you think? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's too easy for Marvel, or it's too easy for somebody who's
for
watching it to
me,
say.
well, yeah, like even just it's there, but is it really a big theme of the movie, or is it just part of the thematic bedrock that all Marvel all Marvel movies have to have? And let us make sure we have just like you pour piles, you have to have the family.
Well, even look at Black Widow, and whereas you have somebody who's evidently an orphan or something, what do? They repopulate her past with an entire family, basically. Whether or not it's a real family or not is another thing entirely. So yeah, I don't think you're too far off. I mean,
the forced family. There's the family you're born into, the chosen family, and then Black Widow's government enforced one.
yeah.
Government imposed.
I should say, first of all, I should have commented on this earlier. It's nice that they didn't fake bring the mom back. Like, she's, as far as we know, she's done. And I thought the Guardian would be her. I thought the Dragon was her for a while. I thought, oh, they're gonna bring her back somehow, and they didn't. They resisted that temptation, so that was good. But in terms of family, family's the basis for a lot of things. In this case, it's the basis for a lot of heroes and their challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Read anything about going the other way is going to sound ridiculous, I know, but read anything about serial killers. How do they get bad? It's usually something from the family, right? Not all the time, but it's usually what happens within the four walls of their house. So it goes both ways. I think it's I don't think that it's easy. I think it's elemental, and then if you don't have a family, well, that creates its own issues as well. It'd be neat to see like an actual orphan-y character and how they deal with things. You would incorporate a found family, I would predict.
Well, I think we have seen it, and Guardians of the Galaxy is just such a great example. Well, maybe here's another thing I noticed about family, and maybe it could be, maybe this is part of a choice, or maybe it organically came out of the writing, but a couple of things. One, he is reconnected to a family. He has a sister who he kind of knows.
Mm-hmm.
And that they aren't, well, I'm still mad at you. You have the weird sister, not sister between, the two, can't remember the character's name now. But Karen Gillan plays one with all the robot parts, and Zoe Saldana plays the other.
Yeah.
No robot parts. Anyway, they love each other, but there's resentment in that. Whereas they seem to really just hard on resolve it at the end of this. Like, these two are connected. They've, they're also a yin yang thing going on between the brother and sister, not going in between them, but unifying them. Mm-hmm. Just as the aunt says, Michelle Yeoh's character says, you've got to accept, you got to own who you are. She says to the sister, it's like, you got to come out of the shadows, come be you, Gamora and Nebula. Thank you very much, Mr. Chaboyko.
Sure.
And so in this film, we see a couple of things. One, you have Katie's family, which is just a solid little family unit.
Yeah.
Which we don't actually see. I don't think we see that in the MCU. Where there's actually, there's grandma, there's mom, there's a daughter. They are, there's a little brother. Sure, they argue. Oh, Hawkeye, the guy who decided the Trump voter, the Trump supporter, Hawkeye / Ronan.
Yeah.
but we see very little of that. And here we see what feels like a family, and that in the end, although the father is lost, he does have a sister. And this is why I'm like, oh, even in meaning and a lot of the meaning stuff, this is Star Wars. It's compressing those 3 movies into one, emotionally, thematically, in a way. Even some of the story beats, not completely. It's not a knockoff.
It's an ode.
Even. Not even an ode. But it rings of it. There's echoes of it, like really clear echoes of it, which I just love. I think that's half the reason I enjoyed it so much. Half the reason I think a lot of little kids, this will be their Star Wars, like really their Star. It has the potential. Simu has, again, there's a lot of little kids kicking fences.
Yeah.
Little boys, little girls being, Shuling or Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of wondering, do you think they're saying something with that?
Sorry, there was a long lead up about fractured families, or
no,
or...
not the. So you got a non-fractured family, which is this would be a big theme. That idea, being connected to the past, being connected to your ancestors, not so much culturally. Like there's only kind of one sort of Western kind of a backhanded slam on Western individuality, perhaps, but no, that idea of continuity in an Asian worldview, that your ancestors are a regular part of your lived experience now, not in a ooga booga kind of and there, but more of a just in a lived. The part of your life is to remind yourself of where you come from.
They're top of mind,
that and the idea of names and everything. So I think I'm answering my question now. But are you buying that? Like, what do you think?
Yeah. No, I mean, they don't really delve into sort of Ying Nan shows them that she's taking them for the tour of Ta Lo. She's showing them that carving that depicts the soul suckers. That have set themselves upon the villagers and that sort of thing, and so that's sort of an ode to the past, people who are no longer around.
I'm more thinking the shrine where they had the little shrine for their mother within a multiple shrines.
Yes, yeah.
I think that room kind of had more of that.
Yeah.
Heck, it's even the father took a moment there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I would like to have seen more. I mean, the mom was really impressive, and she had a couple of really great scenes as well. No, that was a good character. Yeah, no, I think I buy that. Would it differ? Would it differ from, or how would it differ from Western depictions of the same kind of thing? You might have somebody might have a well-worn photograph in their wallet or something like that. I mean, I don't know if that would be the same kind of thing, but you're talking more of an active connection to the past.
I think a clear and obvious and family supported, culturally supported.
Yeah.
Although one commentator is saying, it's weird that they only use their first names. You hear the last name once, when the standard, like a lot of Asian naming conventions, it certainly does. They do it in China, last name, then first name, or family name, then then personal name. What's and that sort of gives you a taste of that sort of community connection rooted in the family, which is, I think, is a pretty Confucian kind of ideal.
Well, and I thought it was an interesting when they all sit down to eat with the father, and he turns to poor Katie, played by
American
Awkwafina,
Girl,
and says, what's your name? Names are very important. Mine is, and he says his own name, and I thought, well, that's pretty, like, that's a big deal. It's not quite Rumpelstiltskin big, but it's kind of a big deal for him to reveal that self about him, but I go by many other names, that kind of thing. But
Kang,
but he says
the
his
Conqueror.
Yeah.
No, Starro the Destroyer.
Starro.
What a great, ridiculous bad guy. Sorry.
Yeah. But so I mean, there's definite. I think there's other things going on here that we might not necessarily pick up on. I mean, I lived in a Japanese house for 2 years that had an alcove where you were supposed to decorate it with pictures of your ancestors. Ours, I used mine to play hockey with, but with a little ball. I had a little stick, a little ball, and anyway.
Like I said, we'll hear more in the next few weeks. This movie is going to be the talk for a while.
Yeah.
But back to this theme, and even one of them, just as he's got to confront his past and accept it, the father has to confront reality. He's got to let go of this. He's got to let go of the past as well, but in a very concrete way.
Yeah. Yeah, and
says,
I saw that.
True Canadian, Jimbo.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. It was a little room, and it had the paper sliding doors, and I put a couple holes in it. But anyway, yeah, you would just sort of. I liken it to Steve McQueen. Spoiler alert! At the end of The Great Escape, when he's got the baseball and he just throws it against the wall,
bouncing it against the wall.
It was that kind of thing, yeah. But anyway, sorry, what was the last point?
Here, this may help you. Richard L. says, hockey may be as revered to Canadians as one's ancestors in other cultures.
Yes, that's definitely what I was going to say. Thank you, Richard.
Oh, speaking of cultures, we've got Dragon Movie Guy.
There we go.
With a dragon in it.
Hello, sir.
Woo! Anything else you want to say on that? We are kind of coming into the home stretch, my friend. Might be time to.
Talking about Tony Leung's character, and sorry, DMG. This is spoiler, so I think he's seen it yet, hasn't he?
Yeah. Well, he showed up late.
Yeah.
I can confirm yes, but who cares? Don't show up this late. And go, well, why are they talking about the whole movie?
Yeah. Anyway.
He's not new.
I feel bad because I'm
multiple
falling behind,
times.
I'm falling behind on my YouTube views. But anyway, I thought that was sort of interestingly played. That whole role was kind of... it was kind of puzzling. He did the sympathetic, a little bit of a sympathetic villain. At the same time, he was a 1,000-year-old warlord, right? So, he has basically mountains of buckets of blood underneath him. But that sort of letting go when he was finally
letting go of desire.
Yeah.
To be truly fulfilled.
Yeah. And is that not a tenet of Buddhism? Is the role of desire, right? And and
I picked the word for because that was apropos.
Yes, there we go.
Okay, before we're getting into the home stretch here, but I think we can do this. First, Jim, why don't you tell us about here? Let me
stand up straight.
Make this official. Jim, tell us all. What are we looking at? What are we looking at next week?
We are watching the unisyllabic movie Kate, which is kind of interesting because Katie was in this other movie, and we have Katie Fowler. So lots of Kates around.
Yeah, it's a popular name. Certain Kate. Age bracket.
Yes, yeah. Look at that neon. That's actually kind of a sharp poster. But so that's what we'll be taking a look at with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's a good one. And it comes out Friday, doesn't it?
It's on Netflix Friday. Although
Pretty fresh.
Yeah, very fresh. I will be giving a review. Always subject to modification. I do have the screener now. I have seen the film, but so I'll come out with a pre-release review. But keeping my mind open that once Jim and I get into it, not in an argumentative way, I have found on more than one occasion that my opinion has matured, modified, adapted. So, which we should always be open to anyway.
Yes.
What I can say though is, that is here's an interesting tidbit. The young woman playing the kid that the assassin gets stuck with, that is the gag. I'm not spoiling anything here. She's 17 now. 16 when she made the movie. She's Canadian.
Oh,
and
nice.
You can hear that Toronto accent, like not in a over the top way or anything, but yeah. Anyway, so just there's a little tidbit to our fellow country persons.
Now it's time for Canadian Corner. By the way, there's a young 18-year-old tennis player named Leylah Fernandez, and I think I'm pronouncing her first name wrong, who is killing it at the U.S. Open right now. And so I suddenly care about tennis. Anyway.
Well, yes. Here is first of all, just a quick couple comments before we get into our, director pass fail final comments.
Sure.
The Upside Down says, I need to see this again soon. Yep, Dan, yeah. I'm glad I saw it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, worth, and Jim, you'll see it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a solid flick. Super solid. Better than solid. DMG says, how about Shang-Chi's sister? She gets abandoned, shows up for one bottle. She has to clean up for both of them, and Shang gets the ring. Yeah, it is what it is.
And she has to close down the Enterprise.
Yeah, exactly. No one was gonna. This is quite clear. I love that. I loved that scene, Jim.
Yeah.
I love that post-credit where it's like, of course she is. And she's turned it into a bit of a, I don't know, urban gallery / cool kid. It's like, where are the skateboards? That's all that's missing is the skateboards. Exactly. And why is no one just tooling around on the base on one wheels?
They need a DJ with the scratching in the corner there. Does anybody know the name of her weapon? The rope with the blades.
The upside down. I thought it was a rope knife. I think
is that what it's called?
Actually said it.
That's kind of disappointing. Yeah. I was expecting something a little more exotic, but anyway. Okay.
All right. So we're counting down. We're in the last minute. Probably going to go over a couple of minutes. It wouldn't be the first time. Jim, are we giving Destin a pass or a fail here?
Pass.
That was easy.
Yes.
I concur.
Yeah.
All right. Any other final thoughts? Any other little comments you want to make?
I was actually going to ask you, I don't want to keep it too long. What did you think of the post-credit scenes? Did they do anything for you? A lot of people sort of audibly gasped, just seeing a character,
I enjoy them.
Yeah.
But they're coming.
Yeah.
You're more it's the information they're teasing to set up the next thing. And I enjoyed that. And I enjoyed the fact that she went to her dad's lair. It's like, that's because she had said it right. This is the culmination of her arc.
Yeah.
Like, she wanted to play with the boys? She wanted to be part of her father's empire.
Mm-hmm.
And if she couldn't, she'd make her own. And now this is the culmination of her character. Brian, DMG, Dragon Movie Guy, had mentioned it, but I saw some other Twitter stuff where people were really complaining, hey, she should have gotten at least 5 of the rings or something. I'm like, that wasn't her mission. I think she's very satisfied with the way it played out. And I look forward to, I just look forward to seeing her on screen.
Yeah.
In almost any role, but I really look forward to her she'll come in, and I wouldn't be surprised, not just necessarily in another Shang-Chi movie, but different movies where it's like just little, oh, okay, you could go talk to my sister.
Yeah. Well,
and said she's shutting it down. Of course she wasn't.
My son,
but go talk to my sister. I could see those moments, and it's just, I look forward to that.
Yeah. My son pointed out that there was no Julia Louis Dreyfus at the end here, like there has been for the past couple of productions. I don't know if movies, but anyhow, that was another thought.
Yeah, I don't know. There was no other than seeing Captain Marvel and Carol Danvers and Bruce Banner.
Bruce Banner.
No white people.
Yeah.
No, one of the major
sword
wrist
guy.
Arm.
Yeah.
Wrist blade. No.
He's apparently a German
razor fist.
There's that Florian Munteanu or whatever his name I'm destroying right now, but apparently he's German and Romanian. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, it had a satisfying emotional and narrative ending.
Yeah.
The father giving up his life was great. The father giving over because he recognizes now his son has the strength to wear those rings.
Yes,
because and this is coming back to that changing, that you can change. There is a redemption kind of theme in this, that you do not have to be bound by who you were a week ago to be that same person today, or 1,000 years apparently, because even the father was able to change, and all he regressed, he recovers at the end. Again, Darth Vader, and there's a sister. But we get a love interest for our hero right off the bat, so we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to go, what the hell?
Yeah.
DMG, I think she is the romantic interest. They just haven't played it as hard as they could have. Jim thinks it might be for, possibly to allow it to develop in further films. Myself, I would have liked to have seen a bit more, but I think she is. I think she is a romantic interest, but right now they're still.
And I was sort of playing with the idea too that she was a stand-in for the absent sister that he felt guilty about. But that's
yeah. But who reached out and was helping? It was her
that's true.
Initially.
Yeah, that's true.
He needed Awkwafina. Awkwafina is okay. All right. I think I got nothing else myself, or I do. It's just not coming to me right now.
No.
Next week. Folks, we will. Oh, the Upside Down makes an interesting comment here. The Upside Down wishes they could just be platonic. Awkwafina and Mr. Liu.
Shang-Chi.
Interesting. Upside Down, I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to actually watching your review now that we've had our thing. See how you follow that up. Oh, excuse me. All righty, everybody. Jim and I, we are wrapping up here. We have been really good at, coming in at a 2-hour-ish mark. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Folks, let's say goodbye to everyone. First of all, to DMG, Brian, thank you so much for popping in. Thanks for coming by. Same with, of course, Curtis. Great to see you. Good night, Upside Down. Thank you for coming by and being part of it. Again, you're all part of the best chat on the internet, damn it. I'll go to my grave. That's a hill I will fight on. That's a hill I'll die on.
There you go.
So Curtis, DMG, Richard L, Katie Fowler, great to see you guys. Yeah, good night, Curtis.
Yeah, good night, Curtis.
Well, some of us, Sean, I don't know if you're still around, but great to see you. Thanks for dropping by. I thought of you earlier when I was going over some of this stuff and saying, you know what, unless you're Sean, how can you keep up on all this stuff?
Yeah.
Sean is the hardest working man on the film YouTube beat, puts us all to shame. All right. Shashank, so great that you could drop by. I know you always come by later to listen. Thank you, sir. And am I missing anyone else, Jim? I think I've got everyone. Oh, yes. Let us not forget Lou Sassel for coming in with his strongly held, although I'm, I doubt well supported, but strongly held opinion. And he came in, never made a big thing of it. Didn't, wasn't here to, jam up the conversation. So, as far as I'm concerned, Lou, you're welcome back. There may be an argument waiting for you, but you are welcome back. Oh, okay. A good argument, positive and nurturing.
Yes. Yep.
All right. So yeah, I think that's where we're at here, Jim. I'm going to turn this off.
Sounds good.
Going to now,
Happy Labor Day, everyone. Happy Father's Day, and for all of you in Australia. Fun fact.
I did not know that. Really?
And I think it's somewhere start of September anyway. But take care, and
all right. Peace out, everyone.
See you later.